John, there's a very important subject that comes up in First Kings chapter 10 and 11. Chapter 10, we go basically learn about the whole realm of Solomon's wealth and position and power and all the authority that he had over the nations, because he was the greatest, the richest of kings during that time period. And we see that in chapter 10. Queen Sheba comes to see him and says, wow, half of what you have, half of what I was told you had, isn't even the half of it. There's so much more. Your servants are online. Your temple that you built to your God is amazing. Your palace for yourself. Everyone is doing what they're told to do, and they're happy about it. It's amazing. And your wisdom, he basically could answer all of her questions. So he knew everything that he needed to answer all of her questions. And it amazes me. But it also just tells us, it doesn't matter how much you have. If your heart is drawn away from God, you're going to be in trouble in the end. And that's what happens, because chapter 11 describes, he had 300 concubines, 700 wives. It's 1,000 women on a daily basis, and he came in contact with. No, he didn't necessarily come in contact with all of them, because technically, a lot of those were arranged marriages for the sake of treaty negotiations and political alliances, and it's all good. But chapter 11, of course, at the end of chapter 11, starts to talk about how God is angry with Solomon because all of these wives have pulled his heart away from God. And it talks about his adversaries in the end of chapter 11, but specifically the big portion there I want you to get is Jeroboam rebelling against Solomon. And God actually sends a prophet to Jeroboam and says, I'm going to take the throne away from Solomon. I'm going to leave him a tribe, because I promised David that he would have an established throne. But the rest of the tribes, I'm going to take them away and give them to somebody else. And that's pretty shocking. I mean, it's like Saul, David, Solomon, and suddenly there's a civil war, basically. The tribes split. And that's what happens when your heart is divided from God and you're worshiping other idols. We don't worship idols, right? Generally in our area, our realm. And Sheba, the queen, she knew all the amazing things that God had done to bless Solomon. So there's this important message there for how we are viewed by the world. People are watching what we're doing. And we also, in this, don't want to be like Solomon. We don't want our hearts to be divided, to be drawn away from God. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And God told Israel not to marry these foreign women, because there's all these different nations that were just pulling Solomon away as he got older. His heart was not with God as he got older. And it says, that God was displeased with this, because the Lord is very angry for his heart. Solomon's heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. I mean, it wasn't like he was just hearing from the voice of God. God appeared to Solomon. God made marks in Solomon's life. And we read a lot in the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, especially Ecclesiastes, talks about how all of the rich, all of the power, all the popularity, all of the wealth and fame means nothing in the end. It's all gonna end. The graves are the same size for the rich as they are for the poor. And when we get to heaven, it's not going to matter what we had or who we were on this earth. It's what we did with the Son of God, Jesus. And we know that. We see that. And we need to be careful not to be like Solomon and to have our hearts drawn away from him. And God tears the throne away from Solomon because of that, because he wasn't faithful to God. And we need to be careful. We need to be watchful of the idols in this world that can pull us away from him. Anything that gets in between you and your relationship with God. I mean, I talk about hobbies, or even pride, emotions, stubbornness. Stubbornness is not something to be proud of. Stubbornness is considered a sin throughout the Bible, because it causes us to not listen to God, and it can bring forth pride. Pride is one of the worst sins, because it says, me, I, and it's selfishness. It says, I can excel beyond, and it's all going to be me, but it's never going to be me. I can't do this in my earthly body any more than you can. It has to be God at all times, in all seasons, and we know that. Solomon is teaching us that, and Solomon has taught us that, because by the end of chapter 11, he's gone. He said, I spent 40 years as king, and then he was in his father's grave, and then Jeroboam, and throughout the rest of Kings, we're going to have some crazy stuff, and God can come bringing it down on his people, but constantly telling him, I love you, come back to me. God's saying that to us all the time, and he doesn't want us to be drawn away by anything in this world, whether it be women, or wealth, or fame, or power, any of that stuff, selfishness, stubbornness, things inside of us that we need him to work on. So be praying about that. Be praying and asking for yourself to have the wisdom of Solomon, but to be wise enough to not make the same mistakes that we see so many people around us making, but to continue to act in love with all of those people, because we are all in the same boat here. We're all in the same ship, and we're all looking to Jesus for our redemption in the end, because that's all that's going to matter. Not our fame, not our popularity, not how big our temples were that we got to build on this earth, but how we treated the Son, whether we believed in him with our whole hearts, because he is risen. He is risen indeed. Have a good day, my friend. Shalom.